about them and all that. First off, the tip has got to be clean. Over time, with the tip being hot, it tends to oxidize, and you'll get a collection of gunk on the end of the iron. You have to clean that off. There's a couple of ways to do it. If it's really bad, I use a little fiberglass brush, get the surface stuff off. Once you get it down to or through the oxidation, you just wipe it on the wet sponge. You can also just dip it in the solder flux. That'll do a nice job of cleaning. And tin it, put a little bit of solder on it. Now, a lot of the better irons have a iron-coated tip, which are a lot easier to take care of than the low-cost items, which oftentimes have a copper tip. Copper oxidizes terribly fast. It used to be that you'd have to file the damn things to get the oxide off. If it's not too badly done, the fiberglass brush works quite nicely. The temperature control iron, by reducing the temperature of the tip, just to keep it warm, it reduces the oxidation significantly. Makes it a lot easier to keep clean. And then by turning up your control, you can bring it up to operating temperature quite quickly, less than a minute generally. So, but if you're doing some soldering, then you set the iron aside for 15 or 20 minutes. If you leave it at full temp, you're going to have a big cleaning job to do when you start soldering again. If you turn it down, or in the case of the non-temperature regulated ones, unplugging it, it takes a lot longer to bring it back up to temp if it's been turned off. Whereas
now this one automatically shuts off when the tip gets up to a temperature. When it drops, it goes back on.
Yeah, the temperature controlled irons often have a thermostat in the head, which interacts with the control circuitry and does that. And actually, what it more than likely does is turns on and off so that the average is the temperature that you want. So, depending upon what type and how much soldering you do, will probably drive the type of soldering iron that you buy. In fact, in many cases, they have 2 or 3 different ones for different purposes. So, I have one similar to this that I use on my bench. I've got a couple of others. I got a little battery operated one that I have in my toolbox. And then my resistance iron for odd stuff.
How about the little propane fire or butane fire?
I don't have a lot of experience with those, but it's basically the same thing, except those have a much hotter flame, and you have to be judicious in how you. Well, wait a minute. Some of those use the flame to heat the iron tip. I don't have any experience with those. So. I'm not sure how easily they are to regulate or.
Like you were saying, if you were working inside the locomotive, you want what, basically a 15 watt.
If you're working on small circuit boards, 15 watts is usually 15 to 25 watts, no more than that.
The rail about 40.
Bud?
Rail if you're working with 40 watt.
Yeah, because you need the additional heat for the mass of the rail. When you have a joint that's between sensitive areas, You can put a heat sink on it, which is nothing more than a piece of metal to absorb a lot of the heat from the rail. There's alligator clips work fine for that. There's a lot of other. One of the vendors has something that goes right on the rail and has a little cutout where you can get in and do your soldering. And it heat sinks quite a bit of the area around the solder joint. I've seen them. I don't have one. I've never used it, so. But anybody else have any questions?
The devils are done.
Thanks
How
again,
about-
Jack.
How about the advocates?
Them too.
Oh,